Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the State of the AI Union. I'm your host, Laura, and joined with me this week is Matthew Volm from the RevOps Co-op. So I'm going to let Matt introduce himself.
Yeah, hey Laura, thanks for having me, and happy to provide a little bit more context on who I am and what I'm up to. So, RevOps Co-op is something that I started, 5 or 6 years ago now, and originally began as a Slack group and a newsletter, and has since grown into a global community of 20,000 plus operators from all over the world. We have a variety of membership options that people can take advantage of. We have courses and education as well. We throw a lot of small group dinner events, happy hour events. We have conferences. We just did our North America event in San Francisco. We're doing our London event coming up in a couple of weeks, and just a lot of resources and things out there to provide value and help people who work in revenue operations. And then in addition to that, I'm also working on a software product called Eventful, which is meant to help with every human moment in B2B go-to-market, which is obviously something that we're going to be talking about today. So whether it's IRL stuff, whether it's RevOps, whether it's AI, whether it's a combination of all of the above, those are kind of the things that intersect in basically every day of my professional life.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you. So you have an extensive network of RevOps leaders, and you are so involved in the go-to-market community. I personally have attended a number of events that you've hosted. So you are at the forefront of what's going on with AI and go-to-market. And I wanted to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about what is working today when the RevOps team has implemented AI for their sales organization.
Yeah, so there's, I guess, a couple of things that I see as I travel around and talk to operators in different parts of the world. I hear a lot of things that are working, a lot of things that aren't working. One common thread I hear is that a lot of people everywhere are feeling behind. Like everyone else is leading or doing all these crazy advanced things, and they kind of feel stuck or like they're in the rear view. But literally everyone feels that way. So I think one thing I'd tell every operator listening is you're not alone, right? Everybody feels stuck. Everybody feels behind, but the truth is we're all actually in the same spot. Some of the things that I see a lot of people doing specifically within RevOps and go-to-market that seem to be working. Everyone seems to be doing a really good job of leveraging call transcripts, integrating those across the go-to-market motion for more context that can be pulled out of those, specifically leveraging them for improvements with forecasting and other pieces of go-to-market motion. Account research is another one that people seem to be doing a pretty good job of for your sales team, your sales reps, instead of them obviously doing manual account or contact research before their discovery calls or other things like that. Just leveraging AI to help give them context, do the research for them. Basically, it's still up to the human to obviously leverage that information. But those are two use cases that I see a lot of different teams leveraging, and a lot of different companies seem to be doing a pretty good job.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, one is in doing the things that we were supposed to do, but faster, and that's the account research piece. And that's actually interesting because I say we do it faster, but I would say that a lot of reps skipped over the account research piece in the past. So maybe now they are more of them are doing it because they
Yeah.
have access to the tools to do it faster. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. You just wing it, right? You're like, I'm good enough at my job. Like I'll show up on a call and,
yeah.
we'll get to the end successfully.
Right, right, right. So now the new baseline expectation is because it's so easy and you can just prompt it, you should be able to just do that. And then the other thing that I was hearing from you is context completion or or as much context as possible by bringing in call transcripts, other deal milestones within the opportunity progression, so that you can have better conversations, maybe better forecasting, thing, right?
Yeah, and just so even your frontline managers, your sales managers can actually leverage the call transcripts and the context you get there. I remember, back when I was VP of business operations, before I started my current company, we were spending all this money on Gong and other companies spending the same, right? And my sales managers and VPs of sales would very rarely have the time to actually listen to calls, because again, they have so much other things going on. And so there's this last mile problem of like, we get the call recorded, all this great stuff happens within the call recording application, but it's not actually leveraged. And then the other piece is a lot of companies are doing a better job now of leveraging the information you learn on those calls across other teams, because again, while sales may get all the glory, they are not the only team at your company that needs to understand how your prospects and customers are actually talking, speaking, thinking about your product. And so getting that information to the customer success team, using it for handoff documentation from sales to CS is another great use case. Getting that information to your product team so they can hear what sort of objections actually happen when you're speaking to prospects. Do you actually lose deals for certain reasons because there's feature gaps or things missing, or is there always one competitor that comes up? Those are the sorts of things where it's just a lot easier now with AI to get information and context to those other teams. So a lot of teams seem to be doing that successfully.
Right. So this raises like a new question, right? So now we all have access to similar tools, and therefore the baseline of where the rep should be is like slightly elevated, I would say, with all of these tools. What does it look like then for rep productivity now that we all have the same tools? Is there something that's going, maybe wrong is not the right word, but is there something that's going not as expected with the introduction of all this AI in go-to-market?
So there are two things that pop up to answer that question. So one is within revenue operations. I think a lot of operators do a really good job of, and whether they do this knowingly or unknowingly, thinking like a product manager as it relates to revenue operations. So revenue operations is what is the product they're deploying to their users who are across the marketing team, the sales team, and the CS team. When you talk about AI technology and it being so accessible across all teams, not just revenue operations, all functions of go-to-market, your marketing team, your sales team, your CS team, the CSMs, the AEs, the VPs of sales, everyone has access to these tools. And like you said, they can have huge impacts on productivity. They can also lead to unrealistic expectations when people that are using them don't have that, I'll say, product manager sort of mindset like an operator does, if you're not having the ability to think upstream or downstream in terms of the impacts that your decisions can have on other teams, other tools, other systems, and also just what's actually capable. And so again, if you're an account executive who has historically been leveraging the tooling and the systems and the setup that you've essentially been provided, you've never had to build that stuff yourself. You don't know what goes into different objects and all those things and the integrations, right? And so now you may see AI, you may see what people are posting about on LinkedIn, what you're hearing from your other AE friends over at other companies, and think that all this stuff is possible, with which it is, but you may think that it's just possible at like the snap of a finger,
Right.
and it's not. And so the expectations is is one thing. And also with accessibility, a lot of people will start just, I'll say going rogue, but doing a lot of things on their own that may be against what you within RevOps want or deem should be done. So that's one thing. I think accessibility is certainly help, bringing technology to all these different teams. But if you don't have the right mindset, you're not using it in the right way. The other thing that came to mind when you asked that question was, if the advent of all this new technology is actually supposed to make us better, more efficient, more productive, then it should also mean that productivity should go up, right? Which means reps should be able to close more. Yes. One person should be able to do more. But I have not seen yet, at least in any of the companies or operators that I've talked to, where they've actually increased quotas to align with these supposed changes in productivity. So then you got to ask yourself is that because productivity is not actually going up? Is it just staying the same? What's the reason for that? Are we just doing our work differently to generate the same outcomes? And in that case, are we actually not really moving forward, or are we just scared or, feeling pressure to not actually increase quotas because, I don't know, typically no one actually likes to have quotas increase. Right. But I've yet to see companies actually say oh yeah, we've made our sales team more productive. And so now instead of the, 5-to-1 quota to OTE, ratio, we bumped it up to 7-to-1, 8-to-1, 10-to-1. I haven't seen anybody actually do that.
Yeah. And what's your hypothesis on why that's not happening yet? Is it because we're not using AI in the right place, or do you think the buyer's expectations have changed?
I think it's because we actually don't understand the impact of productivity changes. I think it's kind of the classic example where no one goes into these things knowing how they're going to actually measure success. It's just hey, we got all this pressure. We got to start using AI. My CEO told me to use AI for stuff. So let's start using AI for stuff. And it's not you're going into this where you're hey, here's my problem. Here's how I'm going to solve it. This is going to generate X on the back end. And so I think we're kind of missing that last step, and we're just kind of rushing into things. And again, if you don't know how you're going to actually measure success or what your productivity is today, for example, it's going to be hard for you to say oh yeah, we deployed this and it made our team better and it generated these results for us. So now we can do Y, for example. I don't think companies are actually going through that today.
Yeah. And in that example you gave, I think the one that we spoke about earlier about, for example, account research. I know for a fact that before AI happened, a lot of reps were not doing account research. Now that they are doing account research and it's really easy, they still have to read through the summary that AI gives them, and they still have to formulate a point of view, to connect the dots between what the company does or their prospect does with how they're going to show up on the call and align that to the business, right? So there's that one extra step there. But then also, if they did that, maybe what we'd see is increase in conversion rates between, let's say, first call and second call. We'd see an increase in first call and second call. But where I think a lot of leaders are sort of gravitating towards too quickly is we want to see an outcome of more closed deals, when really what we're doing is just one step in the process, which has so many other dependencies leading to the outcome of more business close at the end.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it can be easy for people to fall into a trap there, but especially this is where, if you're in revenue operations, you can help with this. Is at the end of the day, everything we do in go to market is essentially just it is one big funnel in terms of it's just a converge, like every step converts, right? And you're going to have like a ton of different steps, and however you want to argue it, like nothing's linear. Sometimes things go back, but like at the end of the day, you're going to start at 100%, and things are going to get chipped away until you get to the end, right?
Right.
And so even with that example that you gave, it's like, hey, if you do nothing else but improve your conversion rate from one step in the process, even if it's like step 13 to step 14 and you have 60 more steps to go, if all that other stuff stays the same and you just improve your conversion rate from step 13 to 14, like that has a downstream effect that ultimately makes its way to closed won. And like those are the incremental improvements that operators can make and that they should be making. And you should also be asking the hard questions of like, if we've done this and there's no change in conversion rates, then why? Like, is it because people have never had access to this information before? So like you said, maybe they just weren't doing it. And so now we're giving it to them, but they don't know how to actually leverage it in their calls. It's like, okay, probably some enablement, some training, right? That maybe can be done there. If you do that and there's still no impact, then it's like, okay, maybe this actually doesn't make a difference, right? Like maybe the quick, 30-second scan of like the website and LinkedIn beforehand is actually all that these people need, and we should look elsewhere. So don't assume that like all these things that you're doing are going to actually be like impactful in the positive. And the other thing is like you can't automate things away without the human needing to leverage them. So like on the sales side, for example, we were talking about call transcripts and everyone wanting to, automate the integration between their call recording tool and their CRM to automatically fill out their spiced fields or their medpick fields or, whatever sales methodology. And it's like, instead of the sales rep having to do it, and it's like, that is fine. But at the end of the day, if you automate that away and then your sales rep never actually looks at what's in those property values, then what's the point of having a sales methodology if you're not actually leveraging it? So that's one example of like, you eliminate maybe the manual input, but you still need the salesperson to look at that information and use it to actually sell and to sell better, right? Like that's the whole point. If that doesn't actually work, then what are we doing here? Like we're just going through these motions unnecessarily. And like, if that's the case, like let people sell however they want to sell, as long as they're going to close deals. Like there's no point in having a sales methodology if, again, your sales team isn't going to actually use them to sell better or sell more.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like going back to first principles. I guess it allows us to go back to the first principles without the drudgery of having to do some of the manual work. If we did that. So sales is about trust. And Matt, you've talked about this concept of trust inflation, especially now that we all sound the same in the digital world. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point, we've all probably bought and sold something in our lives. And I mean, actually, like, I think at the end of the day, we're all sellers, whether we're selling actual products or not. We're typically trying to sell our ideas. We're trying to sell ourselves if we're going through the interview process of a job. So we're all salespeople. And at the end of the day, buying and selling occurs between humans. I don't think robots are going to be buying and selling things from anybody anytime soon. If that happens, then it is like, what's the whole point of humans being in the mix here? So I think buying and selling still takes place human to human. And at the end of the day, trust is the biggest thing that I think drives those interactions. And the way that you generate trust within a relationship is different now than it has been, right? And there used to be different channels and different ways for us to do that in a B2B lens. Things like cold email, cold calls, LinkedIn DMs, right? Like there's a lot of different digital channels where we've historically been able to do that. And I don't think those things are going to go away, but when you look at main use cases for AI, for better or for worse, a lot of people are using them to automate and take the human out of the loop for all of those digital channels. And so that means those digital channels get noisy, and even noisier than they have been. And now, for example, like, I don't know about you, Laura, but like, I don't think I've responded to a cold email that I've gotten in like literally years. And honestly, I don't really read the ones that manage to make their way all the way through to my inbox. Right. I also never pick up my phone for an unknown number. Now, cold calling still works. I actually think that like businesses should probably do more of that, because again, if you do get a pickup, it's a human to human conversation. I think that's something worth investing in. But even LinkedIn now, right? It's like automated comments, automating, like, it's just all those digital channels are really, really hard. And so at the end of the day, with trust, it comes down to person interactions. And so with that, in-person events are a great way to do that. And I see a lot of companies changing their strategy for quality over quantity. And they're saying, hey, I would much rather get 20 prospects in a room for, say, a small group dinner event and be able to talk to every single one of them versus investing the same amount of dollars and time into a digital campaign that could reach, say, 10,000 inboxes, but maybe not lead to any quality conversations. So in-person events, small group dinners, happy hours, conferences, right? Those places where humans actually go to show up in person with other humans. I see that as a lever for companies to actually be successful going forward. Because I think even though we're on a podcast about AI, it's like, that's the stuff, the human to human stuff is what no AI is able to do, or I think going to be able to do anytime soon. So I think that's why it's a big differentiator.
Yeah. Actually, I do respond to cold emails and take cold calls once in a while because I think it's good karma.
Uh-huh.
My SDRs are doing it as well, so I do
That's good.
that.
Put it out there in the world.
Exactly.
I respect that.
And you gave me an idea of an enterprise SaaS vending machine early on. But until then, until then, you talked about bringing us together as humans in these smaller, more intimate human to human connection. I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about how when we first started this digital journey, let's say 30, 40 years ago, with digital banner ads, that was how companies were spending their money. They moved from billboards and physical, like bus stop ads, to digital online banner ads. And then we got to a point where these where the cost per impression just like went down so much, right? Because we developed this blindness to the ads. And I think what I'm hearing you say is like, this thing is happening now with all of these digital touch points that we are trying to do with our prospects, whether it's a digital campaign, whether it's, DMs, whether it's outreach sequences. We always say 7 touches, 7 touches before somebody responds. And maybe now it's 14, 15. But worse still is we could actually be putting the prospect in blindfolds actually to us, like sort of the more they see us, like the less they will pay attention. So I love this idea of going towards smaller intimate dinners, and that's what a lot of companies are trying to do right now, myself included. We're trying to host these smaller dinners, and it's kind of contradictory, right? We're saying, well, we have to use AI, which is a digital thing, but yet we're trying to bring people together in this human to human connection. Where does AI come into how we make this more effective?
Yeah. And two, on your point of all these different channels, I think the main thing is, like, you brought up the billboard to digital ads. Have billboards gone away?
No, you're right.
Like, no, right? Like, and actually, like, I mean, drive through San Francisco, right? Like, they are everywhere. Tech companies are advertising there. So, and same thing with cold calling, right? Like, I mean, it's crazy to think, but like back before computers and the internet, like, guess what? People still worked every day, and like they literally showed up at their office with a phone on their desk,
Right.
and like that was it, right? And then they just started dialing. And so none of these things like have gone away, and I don't think any of these things that are getting, you know, spammed and like super busy are going to go away, but they are going to draw our attention to other places, like you said. And then, yeah, I think I don't know if it's contradictory, if it's ironic that I'm a big believer that AI is actually meant to help us get back to the stuff that we're supposed to be doing, which is interacting with other people. It's not pointing and clicking and copying and pasting and doing all this stuff in software that I think a lot of us have spent a lot of unnecessary hours doing. So even with events, right? Like I mentioned how we're building like Eventful to help with a lot of this stuff around these human to human moments, but like we didn't start there. So in terms of throwing a dinner event, you know, like one of the things that you can use AI for is helping you with venue research. So there is absolutely no need for anyone to go out and do like a Google search for venues. Now, like within the Eventful product, like we built this, but you can do deep research with OpenAI or whatever. Like just describe your requirements, like what you're looking for. Be like, hey, I need a hip and trendy restaurant. I'm trying to get 20 people together. My budget is this. It's got to have a Michelin star, whatever. And like you'll get back a great list of results that, you know, like give you a tremendous shortcut to solve for the venue sourcing piece. You can do the same thing if you're trying to figure out like what conferences you want to go to. Again, we have a bunch of like event intelligence stuff within the Eventful platform, but like use the deep research API through ChatGPT, use Claude, whatever. Be like, hey, my ICP is this. I'm trying to put together an event calendar. You know, tell them what you're describing. Hit one event per quarter, one event per month. What size, you know, are you looking for, right? Like these are all ways that you can cut down on the steps it would take to figure stuff out to be able to execute on these events. So look at how you can automate the things around the actual experience, like printing name tags. Like there's just a bunch of different things that go into like delivering a really quality experience that you can automate with AI. And some stuff is just like you automate with, dare I say, like traditional software, right? APIs and you know, other things that don't involve artificial intelligence at all, but they allow you to provide a really great experience. Like you were at a dinner that we hosted at RevOps Co-op a couple weeks back, and I used the Eventful product to source our venue, which was Copra. I used our product to print the name tags, which you know, you had one, everybody else had one. Everything was integrated back into the CRM so that, you know, the list was attached to a campaign. We know who attended, who didn't. Like those are all the things that we were able to automate away, so that at the end of the day, all we had to do was like show up and focus on like having great conversations with Laura and all the other attendees that were there. And that just makes the job a lot easier, right? And that's kind of the point. Like, you know, I want to focus on like, you know, interacting and engaging with the people that are at these events. I don't want to, you know, spend my time worrying about like, oh my gosh, now I got to like manually print name tags, and like, oh my gosh, I got to do another Google search to find like more venues. Like that's not where people should be spending their time.
Yeah. And maybe what I'm hearing you say too, it's okay to just use it for those, you know, smaller things instead of thinking about like a whole workflow that I think sometimes we want to just say, oh, let's just automate this entire process. But we don't have to. We can do parts of it, and that can still be a very successful use
for sure
of AI, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like easy trap to fall into with everything is like you start thinking about things end to end. But yeah, like you got to chip away, and also like the best place to start with all this stuff is always like, how do you do it manually first? Like, how can I successfully do this in a manual way? Once you do that, then you can figure out how to automate it. And again, just keep in mind, like AI is one potential solution to problems. It is not the only solution. And there are plenty of other ways that, again, like you can solve for the things that you're trying to fix.
Yes, I also think that there's some level of scale that that AI is helping you solve for. However, up till the point that you reach this scale, it may not be a worthy exercise. So, for example, if you are a brand new sales organization and you are trying to sell a brand new product, is it a worthy exercise to go and import all of your transcripts when you have, maybe you're having, two calls or something like that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I think there you should, I mean, I don't think there's any such thing as like future proofing,
Mm.
right? But I think what you need to weigh at every phase of your company's journey is like, are there things that you could do today that might be a little painful, might require a little bit of work, right? That but they'll set you up for success in the future. And it's a balancing act. But I always look at this. Even I had talked with my wife, my kids about this all the time. I'm like, all right, that's a future map problem. Like, I'm not going to worry about that right now. Like, I've got other things I'm going to fix and I'm going to solve for. And like that thing that's a future me problem, right? I'm going to worry about that later. Not going to think about it now. But to your point, if there's things like the transcript stuff, for example, like when you first start out, if you're a brand new company or even if you're bringing a product to market, right? Like you're not going to have a sales methodology, right? But if you continue to grow, maybe you hire more salespeople, bring on a sales leader, all that stuff, right? They'll want to implement something, and it would be a lot nicer if you at least had like foundational level stuff so that you could easily make that transition instead of having to now try to deploy something where, again, it's like there's a new tool, a new system, there's new integrations. You got to get 5 people on board all at the same time instead of, one by one, right? So like that's an example, and I'm not saying that's something that you should do with like the call recording, but like think through it of like, okay, is there some stuff where some incremental investment right now would be more than worth like paying in the future? And as long as that doesn't drastically change or take away from problems you're looking to solve in the here and now, like the right now, then I'd like those are the things that you should do, right? But if you're going through this exercise and you're like, oh yeah, like if I set it up this way, like we'll be in really good shape at the point when we change from a traditional seat-based, model to a usage-based pricing model. It's like, well, that's probably not going to happen for a long time if that's like the current, like the current state of where you're at. So like, why are you solving for that now? Or like CPQ is another example, right? Like if you start selling some stuff and you're like, oh man, I know like things are pretty simple for us now, but like if we continue to grow and like we'll be more complex, like we'll need a CPQ, like maybe it's just better to implement now. Like, no, like you probably shouldn't do that, right? Because those are always a lot in terms of investment, time, and dollars. So again, like just think through it that way. You shouldn't just disregard it, but you shouldn't just dive in to try to fix future problems that, again, you may or may not actually have.
Yeah. Let's talk about the flip side of that, though, Matt. So, a lot of the challenges, I think that a lot of what we're getting to right now with even using AI with the tech stack that we have is stitching together all of this data that came in, that are stored in all of the 10 different systems that the go-to-market team is using. And now it's a lot easier, with MCP, and but there's still work to be done, right, in putting it together. And so for these organizations that are, let's say, smaller and upcoming, maybe companies that have started in the last three years or so, post ChatGPT, what would be your advice on adopting sort of best in breed of current SaaS technology? For example, Salesforce being one of them. That used to be the default go-to. What would you say to maybe some organizations that are starting out their sales team, and will they be running into the same issues that we are today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess two things. One, I think if you have a product that you're trying to sell, like you need a CRM. I know even for us, like we started, like at first we just had a simple Kanban board in Notion, and then obviously like we moved on to HubSpot, and we've been on HubSpot since. But like HubSpot, Salesforce, there's new age CRMs, right? Like you certainly need something there. Now, I think the main thing that companies should be doing though is, I'll say, question everything, and just like don't take anything for granted. So, and I know I'm kind of contradicting myself because I just said like, hey, you need a CRM, but like you should still ask yourself that question of like, do I need a CRM, and if so, like which one do I need and why? Don't just assume that you need to use Salesforce because that's what everyone else is using, or don't just assume that you need to use a HubSpot because that's how every other startup gets started. Like think through that for yourself. Don't spend more time on it than you need, but question everything. Even, I was talking to a person recently about they're migrating CRMs. And I was like, I asked the question of like, like that sounds, pretty like, can be big, hairy, kind of scary sort of project. How are you managing the migration, like with moving all of your data over, right? And they're like, we're just starting fresh. And I was like, well, why? And she was like, well, why not? She's like, our data, it's been a mess. It hasn't been useful. And so why would I want all this messy, non-useful data to now be in this new thing that I'm trying to set up to fix a lot of those foundational issues? And so that's just one example, not to say that you shouldn't migrate your data. And this person is like, I'm going to put it, it's not just going to get deleted. Like I'm going to save it, but I'm going to set things up in our new system in a way that captures data and like sets this foundation in the right way. And so like ask yourself those questions. Like if you're thinking about migrating CRMs, like don't just assume like, oh, well, obviously we got to migrate all of our data. It's like, do you? And like if you do, like what, right? Because if you have 10 years of data that you haven't been using because it's not in a format or like it's not quality, right? Like then do you just want to keep it just so that like it's still not usable and still low quality and still garbage? Is like, yeah, like, so ask yourself those questions. Don't take anything for granted, because companies that are getting built now and going through those growth phases now, they don't look like the market and the world doesn't look like companies that were doing that same thing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So like there's no playbook anymore. We're kind of figuring that out. Like we'll be the playbook, right, for someone else in the future. So for better or worse, we are influencing history here.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, thanks so much. This was a great conversation. Any last words for our audience before we close up here?
No, I'd say no. I mean, like life's too short not to have fun. So like go out, have some fun, hit up these in-person events, like, like go be a human, right? Like hang out with some other people. I think that's what AI is meant to do for us right now.
Exactly. Awesome. Great advice. All right. Thank you to all our listeners. If you like this content, please drop us a comment or hit subscribe button, and then we will be back for more. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura.
Today's episode is sponsored by Computer by DevRev. Computer is enterprise AI built on one idea. That shared memory makes AI work for go-to-market teams. It connects your systems, conversations, and deal history into one living, breathing digital memory, so your teams get accurate, trusted answers and can take action with confidence. Because Computer curates the right context before it ever hits the model, you consume up to 60% fewer tokens with every call. Find out more and start your free trial at devrev.ai.